Welcome to Sci-Fi Book Trek. Today we will be reviewing A Machine by H.G. Wells.
One of the classics.
Well,
Where do you want to start? Yeah.
the start, this comes out, this originally was printed as a serial
Mm-hmm.
and like in a magazine bit by bit, not with a free toy milk on it. This was originally printed in 1895.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite old. And just set the world context. The Alfred Dreyfus affair had just kicked off with him being sentenced in a military court, which caused, let's say, tensions in France. He was accused of spying,
Yeah.
essentially, for Germany. And it highlighted some anti-Semitic feeling within the country. And like he was innocent.
Mm.
Also, in this year, Oscar Wilde puts on his last play, The Importance of Being Earnest. And if you know Oscar Wilde's story, you know why it's the last play.
Yep.
Because at the end of the year, he was incarcerated for 2 years hard labour for being homosexual. So,
Fun.
Great fun in Europe at this time. Also, on a lighter note, the National Trust was founded.
The National Trust was founded in 1895.
Yes.
Oh. Interesting.
See? And like, hopefully people know the National Trust probably more than the Dreyfus affair now.
Mm.
Even though there was a museum open to it in France not so long ago. Anyway, also, in America, volleyball was created.
A volleyball was created.
Yes.
I bet it wasn't bunny shorts and flipping tight t-shirts when
No.
it was created.
Well, it was invented in Massachusetts.
So, after they threw the tea in the harbour, they just went, okay.
Boston, wasn't it?
Boston's in the Massachusetts.
Well, yeah, I think this was a different city in Massachusetts. I can't even say that word. Right, the
Pronunciation is going to be...
And on that note, the Hellenic Shrine?
Nope.
Heian Shrine in Kyoto was finished. I'm just trying to add context, which isn't war. And also, a number of automobile races took place. Like I think the first one was in Italy. Then there was one in France, which is classed as the first rally. And then there was one in the States later on. So,
I mean,
to give context of like the time period of what's happened.
We are talking about more than 100 and... Well,
yeah,
it would have been 100 years ago in 1995, and now we're 25 years on from that.
Nope. Yes.
Well, 25 years. It's 2023, I forgot.
Yes. 28.
No, it's not 2028.
No.
I know what you mean.
Oh. It's like talking to an Eli. Anyway, on that note.
But Wells was the first person to coin the term time machine as a device specifically designed for travelling through time.
Yeah, and this was probably the first book that at least popularised time travel and probably like the linchpin of where time travel stories owe a debt to.
Mm. Without the time machine, we would have no Back to the Future. That said, we would also have no hot tub time machine, so Swings and roundabouts. Adaptations will...
We'll follow in spoilers. Anyway. Now, initially, what did you think of the...
I definitely enjoyed it. I mean, the opening chapter, without getting into spoilers, the opening chapter has some interesting concepts where I just... The ideas of 3-dimensional space, 2-dimensional space, and 4 dimensions, and I just thought, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be fun.
I mean, it's... At the time, was science. Now, it's classed as sort of pseudoscience, but it's very good. Like, because he sets out the playing field for the layperson very well.
Yeah, and it's a very, very good description of what is the dimensional thinkings behind his invention, essentially.
And considering this is the first book which really deals with a time machine and popularizes time travel, you kind of need to lay that out, the groundwork of the idea of traveling in time.
Yeah.
And the trying to put science like back in behind that concept.
But the thinking that Wells has got behind the idea as well, that, you know, he's basically treading new ground as far as I'm aware. The idea of it being just another dimension that you can essentially control in the same way that you can fight against gravity if you know how to counteract.
Yeah.
If you know how to produce lift, you can counter gravity.
He talks about balloons rather than planes.
Yeah, that's cool as well. Yeah. So, as far as the length of the story, it's a very short story. It's 80 pages in length, even on this size of book. And
mine was just over 100 pages. But yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
But the type is readable. Yeah. But a good chunk of this particular book, so it's only about 1 centimetre in depth, and about half of that is introduction material and appendices. The actual story itself features probably into about 1/3 of the page count. But yes, it's quite dense in terms of the actual content that is trying to be pushed forward. There's at least 3 primary set locations, where one of them is the time traveler's study, where he's talking with his fellows of anonymous.
Yeah, important. Only one has a name.
That was confusing to me.
Yes. Only 2 characters in the entire book have an actual name. I believe, and that's it.
Yeah.
It is very interesting how he gets around some of it.
I mean, that's a different note, but as far as the locations are concerned, you have the time traveler study. You have the future, which does cover a rather large chunk of the story as it is.
Yes.
And then there's a further point into the further distant future, which is a bit of a minor location comparatively. And then you end up back in there.
You see, the 3 locations I thought you were talking about were his house, like mostly his dining hall. Say hall, study / the area immediately surrounding the Sphinx, and then maybe the Green Pagoda.
Yeah, but it's that.
There's not a lot to it. But there's probably more themes than locations.
I mean, that was an interesting one for me, trying to work out what the themes of the book actually are. You could very easily just write this off as it's a
Uh,
it's a comic, it's an adventure serial, there's no deeper theme. There is a little touch of, would you say, classism?
yes.
But yeah,
But on that sort of note, you mostly read more current day stuff. How was it for you reading it?
I enjoyed it.
I mean, did you struggle with the prose or the languages and like?
It's very flowery language, but no more than I'd expect of a Victorian era author. And, I might look stupid.
No, but I mean, what I'm trying to get at is like some people are put off thinking they won't understand anything in there. It'll be almost written in another language, so to speak.
Foreign vernacular.
Sort of, yes. And like they'll have to keep on looking up words.
Mm.
And like there are a number of words he uses which have fallen out of the vocabulary.
Yes.
But you kind of understand what he sort of means and also, get a dictionary. Well, look up on your phone, it's quite simple.
Yeah. I didn't have problem with it.
No.
Um,
That's fine.
whether it would be the same if you handed this to someone else, I'm not going to generalize, but, if you handed it to someone who did have issues with scientific words, I don't think they would necessarily have an issue. I think one of the things that you probably got to remember is that I think Wells wrote this for a magazine.
Yes.
So not everyone at the time would have been a learned gentleman.
Oh, no.
I mean, let's be honest, Wells himself was basically working in the draper's shop.
Well, yes, but what I mean is not the scientific language. It's more the everyday common language is different.
It is.
And like you could say our language has evolved or maybe devolved depending on your viewpoint, but it's whether it's still an accessible piece of work.
I think it is.
Okay.
That would be my opinion because, like I say, I think it was designed for people to get get some entertainment out of it that weren't necessarily scientifically minded themselves. And even if the language has fallen out of favor in some points, you can still get context, even with everything else that's going on.
So overall, you thought it was easy read?
I thought it was an easy read. I found it enjoyable. It's got some, it's rather interesting to see the ideas of the time brought to paper.
And you didn't think it was over political, I would say. Ideological.
I wouldn't say so. I read it as a story. I read it as a story with a guy who invents a time machine.
Yeah. And, it's that simple. He was curious, so he did something.
A man in a shed.
Yeah. It does feel almost sort of Wallace and Gromit text. Like Grand Day Out.
Yes, absolutely.
That first Wallace and Gromit. It feels kind of reminiscent of that in some way.
Yeah.
Or Wallace and Gromit feels reminiscent. With just the quaintness, but also the adventure.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean,
you can
get through it in an afternoon. Let's be perfectly honest.
Also, I was going to say, can you see the influence this has had on further things like in the coming forwards towards us, like on other stories?
I mean, other than the term time machine, it doesn't deal with any sort of paradox themes. It doesn't deal with anything that you would expect from a time machine story.
No, it is very basic, but it is the first of its kind, so you would expect that. I mean, if it was any complicated, I don't think it would have succeeded.
Yes.
And also being serialized, it's...
What? I mean, how do you serialize?
I think it was chapter, because apparently it came out from January to March.
Right. It just seems so short.
I think it was like a chapter at a time or something like that.
And
But yeah,
again,
he has, well, H.G. Wells did revise some later editions to make it fully work, and I think there was at one point there was a further ending put on, which Wells didn't like, and that was taken out.
well, there is an epilogue on that one, which...
It's not the epilogue, it's another.
Okay. But, yeah, enjoyable read. And I think it would be comes highly recommended from me. Not that...
Yeah, and I absolutely love Wells, and Time Machine is brilliant.
We're going to have to find a book where we don't actually like.
You want to show me another Star Trek book? Thank you for watching our review on Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Hope you enjoy the book if you try to pick it up. Bye.
Bye. See you next week for spoilers.
Yeah, and that. That was our review of... I was going to say What Worlds. Ooh la.
Thank you for our review of Orson Welles.
The Third Man. No, I'm going down the rabbit hole now.
You got Deep Profundus over there.